Hey everyone, Sven Nelson, C2C Resources, the guy that gets you paid. I am here with my good friend Tonya Schulte from the Profit Constructors. Tonya, would you mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself and what you guys do there?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me today, Sven. Yeah, so I founded the Profit Constructors almost a decade ago. We've been around about 9 years, and we were really founded with a very particular vision and mission, which is to help our clients who are mostly commercial trade contractors run with the big dogs, right? And so the idea is if you're a small commercial trade contractor and you want to grow and you want to expand, you want to grow your knowledge, you want to grow your in revenue size, whatever the case may be, and that's where our team usually can come in and help us, like I said, a small trade contractor kind of understand how to push their business forward.
Perfect, perfect. And so, we often talk off camera like we do, and one of the things that we always talk about is construction and collections in construction, right? And so, much like any other field of business out there, most of these people are really great at their craft, and then they unknowingly or unwillingly or find themselves extending credit, right, before they even really know what that is. And
Yeah.
so I brought you on here today because I wanted to talk a little bit about your relationship with your clients and how you coach them through collections in the construction industry, which is something that I deal with my clients, both suppliers, subs, GCs on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I think when we first talked about this topic, we were talking about KPIs, right? Like what are your KPIs? What are your metrics when it comes to collections? And basically, I knew you brought up a good point, like who's going to be responsible for that, right? Who's going to be responsible for the collections job? So I mean, what kind of things do you talk about with your clients when it comes to that?
Yeah, 100%. It's about finding like what you're just mentioning, like the right workflow and setting up the right boundaries and responsibilities on your team, right? So 100%. One of the first things that I often ask clients is who does your billing and who's responsible for calling and doing collections internally, right? And a lot of times those are things that are just sort of happening, maybe willy-nilly. People don't
Right.
necessarily have a designated person or workflow around how that should happen, right? And then the other side of it is, I mean, if we even go farther back than just who does the billing, we could go all the way back to like, what kind of information are you collecting up front from that client, right? So you and I have talked about, and I love you. You know how much I love you, Sven, but ultimately it's our goal to make sure the client doesn't get into a bad spot and need collections.
Absolutely.
And so the very first thing we want to talk to them about is like, are you collecting all of the right information up front? Are you protecting your lien rights? Are you crossing every T and dotting every I at front? Because what typically doesn't get you paid at the beginning is not knowing exactly how to submit a billing or not knowing exactly who to submit it to or forgetting to file some piece of paperwork that's going to come back around and bite you in the butt later, right? So it's all about, do you know what you should be doing and whose responsibility is to do that same workflow every single time on every single job.
So let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I think a lot of people, a lot of businesses out there, when it comes to construction, they fail to do some really key things in the beginning, right? Which is, getting a job sheet, right? Like who's on the job? Is this a bonded job? Who's the bonding company? What's the contact information for the bonding company? Are we leaning this job? Are we not leaning this job? So, there's kind of two things there. There's a job sheet and there's kind of like a new customer checklist, right? That people and you've actually been kind enough to supply that, and we'll put some links down below for the people that are looking for these resources. But I'm a big fan of having a job sheet, and a lot of the customers that I deal with, some really big construction rental equipment companies, and they have no idea where their equipment is from time to time, right? So I mean, I think that's important information. Like, who's the job owner? Who's the GC? Where is the job even located at? Right. So,
Yeah.
um, I think those are great, great pointers to let people know. Um, and
Yeah, and to that point, like where is it, right? Like it's unfortunate because if you don't, let's say you have just started out and doing this and you don't even understand the lien law in your state. And you and I both work across the country, so every state's going to have a little bit of a different rule there.
100%. Yeah.
You don't, let's say you're required to file a preliminary notice to protect your lien rights at the beginning of a job. even just not filling in the coordinates of where the job is located on that preliminary notice could end up wiping out all of your rights to lien on that job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, there's the little nuances, and every state has their own individual lien laws. And, some states are more difficult than others to file a lien in, almost
Right.
on purpose, it seems like. But, there's a lot of different nuances with, when you give notice to lien a job, how you're giving notice, how you're following up with that, and that your lien is filed in a proper manner and timely manner, right? So,
Right.
all of those nuances people need to be educated on, people need to know before they get into it, not after, right?
Right.
I have guys that come to me after, like, they've already got a debt and they're like, hey, I want to lien this job. Well, did you do this and this? Well,
Yeah.
no, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. Well, you can't file a lien then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I really think you made a really salient point earlier, which is a lot of times you and I know credit managers from supply house days. I used to be a credit manager for a larger supplier back in the day, right? Like you and I both worked in that space, and a lot of the larger suppliers have a larger team, a larger internal team, right? I don't think that a lot of these smaller subcontractors and trades folks understand that they're literally becoming a credit manager sometimes when they start their business. So you had
Absolutely.
said they don't even really understand that they're extending credit and what all that entails. And I
Right.
think that's something super important for these guys to think about and to take stock of as they're making their policies and procedures.
Yeah, I know. I 100% agree with you. People don't realize that they're extending credit until they've already done it, right? And so,
And then they have no idea how to be a credit manager.
exactly. I think you were telling me a story the other day about a customer of yours that went to go file a lien, and then they lost. Tell me the story again. It was like $3 million account or something like that, right?
Yeah, and the unfortunate part is I see this over and over again where our guys I want to stress this is a relationship based business. We all can agree on that, right? But I think you and I have talked about before, one of the best ways to preserve relationships is by having the right pieces of paper in place, right? That's how
100%.
we best preserve relationships. And so the unfortunate part is sometimes, and I've seen this again and again, people think, well, I shook hands with this person, or I've done business with this person for X number of years, and so therefore those rules aren't really going to apply because when it comes right down to it, this guy is just going to do right by me, right? Well, what I've seen time and again is like, okay, but that project manager moves on and he goes to a different GC, or that company is sold and now it's an entirely different owner, right? So there's all of these different things that can come into play. And I think in the case that I think you're talking about, we had a client that had done business with the same client of theirs for almost 30 years in one capacity. They were doing a lot of service and maintenance and repair work for them. Well, then they decided to go ahead and do a big new construction job for that same client, and they didn't take any stock of their preliminary notice rules here in the state of Arizona. And so, with a client that they'd done work with for 30 years, and they're like, it should be fine. I'm sure they'll take care of us. The something came down on that job and the client didn't want to pay the full amount and they didn't have anything in writing to preserve their lien rights because they hadn't filed preliminary notices on time. So by the time we came in and helped them adjust that situation and started filing the preliminary notices, they went from being able to collect rightfully so $4 million. They were only able to really prove that they could collect $2 million.
Oh
They had
man,
to settle for like half of what they were owed.
and that's way more than their profit in the business, and
It's
they ended
devastating.
up in the hole in that business, and that can destroy a lot of these companies, right? I mean, that can completely put them out of business if they're not equipped to handle or absorb a debt like that.
Thankfully, with our cash flow management services, we walked them through, kind of held their hands. We were able to there was one point at which they had like $2 in the bank, right?
Yeah.
It was super tight for quite a while, but we were able to get them to the other side of that. But that's not always the case. That sometimes these can be super devastating to a small business.
No, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what KPIs you tell people to initiate when they're collecting in-house. I mean, I know I have my list, but I'm curious to hear what KPIs you tell your customers to follow when it comes to collecting on their
Yeah.
receivables.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our guys are dealing with larger GCs. So I think one piece of this is to understand, you and I, again, are familiar with some terms that maybe a lot of these guys aren't familiar with. Things like days sales outstanding, right? Like how long is an invoice going to be on your books? And so one of the very first things that I start to talk to our clients about is Do you know with every client of yours that you're going to be working with, and again, we're dealing with a lot of trade contractors who are working for larger general contractors, do you know for that larger general contractor what their typical time to pay an invoice is? Because I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that there's not a lot of net 30 happening in that space.
Right.
There's actually a lot of net 60 and net 90, and that's just how that general contractor is going to pay. And if you, as the small trade contractor, don't have enough cash or have enough, capital available, you're not going to be able to float that general contractor necessarily for that full 90 days. And so it's super important, right, to look at who do you want to work with. And so day sales outstanding, which is just the term, but it's how long is an invoice on your books before it gets paid. That's something super, super important to pay attention to. And I want my clients to pay attention to it on a per client basis, because there might come a time where we say, you know what, we're doing pretty well right now, and it's not worth it to us to work with maybe a larger
Yeah.
general just because they're going to be slow to pay, and we really don't need to do that. We can go ahead and work with some smaller folks and get paid more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a definite important KPI to watch out for. And one of the things I tell people is, follow up with the customer 5 to 7 days after the invoice goes out initially, and people are like, "Whoa, that's way too soon." Well, you've all heard the saying, "The squeaky wheel gets the grease," right? So if you're following up with them 5 to 7 days after that invoice goes out, you're one, making sure that they got the invoice so they can't use that excuse later. And two, you're making sure that there's no disputes, right? There's no issue with the product or service that they receive, because those are the two biggest excuses that we get when an account comes over to us for collections is they never got the invoice, or all of a sudden there's an issue with the service or product they received. Well, if you notate that on that initial call, you can make sure and have note of that, and then when they bring that up, you can say, "Hey, we talked about this. This wasn't an issue before. How come it's an issue now?" And can
Yeah.
kind of call them out on it, right? If they're trying to use that as an excuse. And a lot of companies do use that as an excuse
Oh,
to
for
hold on
sure.
to their cash, right?
Yeah. Every excuse that you could possibly have, right? Why would they not? We all want to hold on to more of our cash. But yeah, so to your point, and I think this is why you and I've always gotten along so well, we think so much alike, right? Like that's one of the very first things that I institute a policy around for some of our clients too, is like when you send it out. So there's a couple tools we use where we have like automated reminders that go out. You can set a certain amount of time before that first automated reminder goes out.
Okay.
But also, we start working with our clients to ask their clients to just shoot back a little received email, right? And so most of
Yeah.
our clients, once we kind of train their clients, and because we just ask, right? Like, did you get that? If you could just shoot me a received every time you get one of these, that'd be great. And after we do that a few times with every one of their clients, we start getting all those received notices back
Right.
if we're just sending out a bill for them, right? And so just again, it makes it really nice that there's no question that you got it. And then, we're not just asking them to say they got it. We are saying, and when you get it, please look it over and let us know if we need to make any changes. Because again, frankly, that happens all the time where they're like, no,
Sure.
we don't think you were that far along on the job. You need to change this. And so
Yeah.
we want to know right away, is this the correct billing? And is it in your hands? And is there going to be anything that's going to hold up payment on it?
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I tell clients to do is like send a read receipt. There's a read
Yeah.
receipt email that you can send whenever they open your email. There's a
Hmm.
read receipt that they can automatically send back, whether they respond or not. You'll know that they.
Yeah.
So we talked about job sheets. We talked about, a checklist or a setup checklist. What about change orders and retention? I know that there's so many times where my clients come to me and they're like, "Hey, this guy doesn't want to pay for the change order," and they were on the job and they said they were gonna take care of it if I just did the work, right? And then they went ahead and did the work, and then they didn't get a signed change order.
Yeah.
So here we are, like
Yeah.
a dispute
Back,
because somebody that was managing the job on the site wanted
yeah.
something done different, and it's
Yep.
not part of the initial contract.
Back to all the horror stories, right? I mentioned it before. I had a very similar story. Client doing work. Oh no, we've done work with these guys forever. We know this project manager. He's great. He's good for his word. And then sure enough, the general contractor they were working for got bought out by another larger GC. No paperwork was in place, and there was like $200,000 worth of change orders that the GC that came in and bought the smaller GC just disputed and said, well, if you have nothing in writing, we're not paying for that.
Yeah.
$200,000 worth of work. Again, these can be like devastating problems, right? So, one of the things that we encourage our clients to do on that front is because the job sites are busy, the field is busy, everyone's crazy, and you do want to keep your client happy. So, you want to walk this fine line, right? So, one of the things that we encourage our clients to do is say, absolutely, we can do that for you. So there's a couple ways you could go. Sometimes the guys in the field are authorized to say, we can do that for you. This will be the charge. I'm going to email you right now. And they'll just email a real quick, even just
Sure.
an email that says, hey, this is what we talked about today and we agreed on this price. Does that sound good to you? Please email back. And then they
Yep.
have something in writing, even if it's not the official
Boom.
subcontract change order, they've
Yep.
got it in writing. Or the other thing is they can say, we absolutely can do that for you. Let me get it back to my estimator so he can get you out our official change order form today. And just make sure you have a good workflow between field and office so they can get right back out, right? You don't want to say no. You don't want to say no, we can't help you and we're not your guy. You want to be the guy that they want, right? But at
Absolutely.
the same time, you do have to have some sort of process to just protect your bottom line.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I agree with that. All of this stuff is good stuff. So today we talked about, who's accountable in your office to handle collections. What are you going to be watching out for? The KPIs, making sure we have a job sheet, and you're filling that out before the work starts, not after. You have a new customer checklist. You know everything about that customer. You know what they do, what they're into. You know their kids' names. No, I'm just kidding. But I
That's
mean,
not bad to know.
you want to know everything you need to know before getting into work with these people and doing stuff. Even though this person may be your best friend, you may have worked with them for years and years and years. Let's get it in writing, right? Same
Yeah.
with the change orders. Get those in writing every time. And I think if you fill those job sheets out and you're following up diligently, you really shouldn't have any issues with regards to collections, unless you're just dealing with a criminal. And in that case,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how good we are, we're never going to get those people to pay us, right? So
Right.
they have no morals, ethics, or values, they're never going to pay. So,
And then we call
uh,
you, Sven.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Is there anything else that you would recommend beyond what we talked about here already?
Yeah, I think, you and I have talked about this before too. I think the only other thing is uh, we live in the digital age, right? So I
Yes.
would highly recommend folks seek out some ways to automate a lot of these processes and use the right tools to just create much more efficiency. Again, yes, you want a person responsible for doing this, but that
Yes.
doesn't mean that person has to do every one of these steps every time. You can automate a lot of what we've talked about.
100%, 100%. Is there any tools or resources that you would recommend for people? Anything that you guys use?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we use QuickBooks Online, right? So there's invoicing and ways to automate out of there. And we also are really big fans of a software called Notify. So again, especially for those trade contractors that are working either residential or commercial, but it's really dialed in for the commercial guys. It's one of the best tools out there.
Awesome. Notify. Okay, so it's like notify.com.
Yep.
Knowify.
KNOWIFY.com.
ify.com.
Yeah.
Okay, notify.com. All right.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to ask you, how do people get a hold of you, Tonya, if they're interested in your bookkeeping services? And, obviously you work with a certain clientele.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you, and who's your typical client that you're looking to work with?
Yeah, so we're looking to work with that, like I said, small to mid-sized growing trade contractor who's probably mostly doing work in the commercial space. They might do new construction and service and maintenance. We're pretty well versed on both sides of that. And so that's kind of our sweet spot. But I will say, if you have clients that are in that construction space and they're like, well, I don't quite fit what you're saying, Tonya, but do you know someone else? We always do. I actually lead a group of construction related accountants, right? Like everyone that's in that group does some sort of construction. So even if you don't fit our sweet spot, I can probably get you a referral to someone that does fill that niche. And I think that's super important, right? To use someone who truly understands your specific needs, right?
Awesome.
So I can usually get you the right place. But you can email us at hello@theprofitconstructors.com, or you can give us a call 480-442-4032, and we'll find somebody that can help you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Tanya's been great to work with. I can tell you that for a fact. I know you've referred a few of your customers, and you've even been a client at one point as well. So, thank you so much for jumping on here. Really appreciate all the information and all the little tidbits of documents and things that you prepared for people. And we'll put the links below so that people can access those and know how to get in touch with you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Tanya?
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Sven.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk with you soon.